You've been robbed.
Avery, it's a big day of change for us here at the Green Corner. Days of firsts and days of lasts.
I didn't do that.
You might be noticing all the shit is missing. Well, this is our last shoot here, Avery.
It is this iconic set you guys have gotten to know so well over these many years. We're gonna be doing new stuff.
We shoot at my house and I'm moving, so this is going away. The original Green Corner. All praise be the Green Corner. It's the last one. We're not going away for good. We're gonna keep shooting. We're gonna become a traveling YouTube series for a little while while I figure out where we're gonna be living.
While we work on a lease on a studio.
Yeah, and our studio should be ready by around Christmas. So it's gonna be a bit of a tumultuous year for the Green Corner. Our last shoot here, which is sad, but new beginnings. It's also a day of firsts, because for the first time here in the Green Corner, we're going to be talking not about movies, but about books.
Books, the old school, the
original movies.
The original movies. What's the line from Princess Bride? Back in my day, television was called books. There it is. Cut it all out.
That's right. When I was your age, television was called books.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about books. We've talked about books on the channel before, more in passing, more like we talked about the Dune movie, I talked about reading the Dune book. You've always been an avid reader. You've read a lot of friggin' books, and I have not. I'm the type of adult who, like, a book would come up and I'd be like, oh, I should read that. And then you read that book, and then you don't keep reading other books, you just stop reading for another 6 months.
With I read a ton up until about second or third year of high school, and then you kind of burn out on it through university. And then, I kind of picked it back up a couple years ago. There's certain scenarios where I read a lot, and I've been through a lot of stuff, But I know what you mean about kind of having that momentum, that like spot in your routine where you read.
Yeah.
Is a little tough in this day and age.
It is, and it's easy when you finish a book to just fill that time with movies, video games, other media sources, and not
editing
just
Green Corner episodes.
And not just pick up another book and just keep reading. The change for me, at least this year, I've probably read 10 books this year already.
That's a lot of books.
And the big difference for me was like just always be reading. And now that I'm reading as like an always activity, I am loving it. And I have kind of recaptured the avid reader spirit. I think I'm becoming a very avid reader. And I want to talk today, the theme of my books, I have 3 books to kind of show and tell with you today. And the general theme are the books that have kind of got me back into reading and being really passionate about reading, to the point that I'm reading books over watching movies or over playing video games if a book's really gripped me. I got 3 books that have kind of done that for me, and that's what I want to talk about. You haven't had quite this transformation. You've been reading more than me in history. So what are the books you want to show and tell, Avery, today? Like, what's the theme?
When I got back into reading, which wasn't, I haven't read continuously my whole life, but a few years ago, I kind of had trouble figuring out what I liked, because let's say I'm about 22 at this point, and the last time I had really been reading a lot, I was 15. And so I kind of tried to get back into it and like read fantasy and sci-fi stuff, because that's what I was reading. And I found a lot of it kind of bad and boring for a lot of reasons, but I just kind of thought that's what I liked, and it was by default, and I didn't quite know. It took me a couple years to kind of zero in on what I do like now as an adult. And the answer to that was The Expanse.
Okay.
The Expanse, that was the series that did it. That was I tore through that, all 8 or 9 of those books. Wow, like the first, when you get to the time skip, like the first 6.
Yeah.
In like a couple months. After not having read for many years, I just like devoured them. Those are exactly what I like reading as an adult. And I'm not going to talk about those. They're really good. Read them. That's it. But what I am going to talk about, I've got 3 books that essentially, I've finished The Expanse, now what?
Okay.
So these are 3 books that share a lot of common DNA, but kind of go off into their own direction, and that I enjoyed for similar reasons. And that is more a function of just that's the kind of thing I read now. And so that's what I'm going to talk about.
All right, so the Expanse, and now what?
Yeah, I finished The Expanse, and now what?
And I also understand you've come up with, we did this on our Creep Tapes episode, you come up with some kind of scale or rating system for us to use as we go through these books. You want to share that with the fine folks at home, Avery? I don't know what this is. So.
Yeah, so this one's going to be pretty simple. Books, I think, are a lot less than movies. I feel a lot less comfortable than with movies doing like any kind of objective ranking or even a critical ranking. Books are just so big and have so much going on, and they're so personal.
The way they work with your brain is a lot more random than movies.
Yeah, and it's a lot harder to just like unify it, and I was like, it was good or it was bad.
Sure.
Because every book does things well. So the way we're going to organize this is more practical, more realistic, and this we're going to say it's a buy, it's a borrow, or it's a skip. That's for you personally. So I need a copy on my shelf. I'll pick it up, read it, give it back, move on with my life, or out.
Okay. Buy, borrow, or skip. You know what? That's clean, concise. I can get behind something like that.
There you go. And you know what? There's a lot of fantastic books that are skips, and there's a lot of real bad books that are on my shelf and are going to stay there. So
That's true.
It's personal.
That is true. Why don't we get into some freaking books, Avery?
Let's talk about it.
I'm going to start with, it's funny you talked about reading fantasy, because that's what I'm going to start with. Now, this is Brandon Sanderson's Words of Radiance, which is the second Stormlight Archives book. I'm about 2/3 through it. When we were prepping for this episode, I had only read the first one, The Way of Kings, but I have been devouring the second one. So this is kind of going to be a discussion mostly of Way of Kings. I don't know where to fucking put this. I'll put it back.
Just throw it over your shoulder.
This is mostly be a discussion of Way of Kings, but I guess a more general discussion of the first book and a half of the Stormlight Archives. I think that what I want to talk about with Stormlight is that I really, really liked this book, Way of Kings, and I think Words of Radiance I'm liking a lot more. I think it's really improved in its second book.
Cool.
However, what I thought the Stormlight Archives was going to be could not have been more wrong from reality, and I got lucky in that what it ended up being was something I really liked. However, I think you just as easily could, if you thought it was what I thought it was, not like it, because it's very different than that. So I guess what I want to do is I kind of want to talk about why I like them, but also make a more informed recommendation to kind of tell people what I wish I knew before I started these. I experienced a lot of friction at the beginning, and I think if I had better expectations, I would have just liked it all more. And now I'm in, but I want to do this for other folks. So
Just real quick, I'll say I think this is the only book we've both read.
Oh, true,
Anything
yeah.
we're talking about here. Not for me.
Yeah.
This one's a skip for me. I recognize the quality, but I think you'll touch on some of the reasons why I didn't.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect kind of segue into talking about this book, because you look at this book, I mean, they're all the same size. You look at this friggin' book, it's like 1,400 pages. It's the longest book I've ever read. The first one, and they're all about the same size. And there's gonna be 10 of these fuckers. Like there's 5 now, but the first arc is done. He's gonna write 10. And it's not George R.R. Martin, it's Brandon Sanderson, so you know he's actually gonna do it. There's gonna be 10 ginormous books in the series. I had never read epic fantasy. I have read Lord of the Rings, I've read Dune, but to me those are like
Yeah, they're different.
classic literature. Those are the granddaddies. I haven't read modern fantasy. I haven't read a lot of these things that have been just books, not adapted fantasy. I assumed this was gonna be dense, heavy, hard to get through, like super, whatever, I don't know, the most complicated epic fantasy book you could imagine. That's what I thought this would be, because they're long, and he's a big name in fantasy, and I knew nothing coming in.
Yeah.
Much to my surprise, this book could not be further from that. This is I think I joked with you that Brandon Sanderson's writing for babies. This shit is so easy to read. He writes so succinctly, so cleanly. And I do want to I'm not shitting on his writing. I do think he's a good writer, but I think what he's trying to do is very contrasting to what this book has to offer, because the world of Stormlight is vast. It's huge.
Yeah.
You open the first couple pages of the book, there's a whole map of the world of Rosharl, these kingdoms and creatures and this unique magic system. You expect the book's gonna be like about all that. That's just kind of the backdrop.
Yeah.
And his writing is so simple, everyday English, anyone can read this book, that it's almost, those two things felt paradoxical to me.
He was clearly raised on a lot of like older fantasy. Like if you go into the store and pick up all those ones that just look like that.
Yeah.
There's like the Brooks and the Goodkind and all that stuff. It's in that vein.
Yes. And that's what I realized, is this is not grimdark.
No.
This is not Game of Thrones. This is not complex political scheming, deep philosophical arguments. This is Star Wars.
Yeah.
That's the closest thing I could come up with.
Yeah.
This is closer to the pulp, action, adventure, heroic fantasy of like the 70s, the kind of stuff you were saying. And for me, the closest touchstone is Star Wars. I think when you get into Star Wars, you go to Mos Eisley Cantina, you see all the different alien races and all the different stuff, and your mind starts to wander. Wow, this world's huge. I want to explore it. Like the world of Star Wars is what's get you sucked in. But at the end of the day, Star Wars is just the classic hero's journey. Luke just is a backwater kid who rises up to fight the Empire, and that's what Stormlight is. It's a simple, heroic action story set in this huge world. And I think it does that perfectly. But you gotta be in the mood for it, because this isn't a big philosophical book that you can chew on and reread and find new meaning. It's closer to an action movie, but it's just a damn well written one that's fun to be in if that's what you're in the mood for.
The set pieces are really cool.
They're great. And the Sanderlanche, as it's become known, is the Sanderson Avalanche, which is this is what the nerds online call it, that every one of his books ends with kind of all these disparate threads coming together to this big epic climax. He pulled it off for me. The end of Way of Kings had me tearing up, not in a way that I'm proud of, but in the way where, like, in Endgame, when the portals open, that tear up, where, like, I'm tearing up and I'm embarrassed about how geeky it is, but I'm tearing up nonetheless. He actually made me feel real inspiration, you know, and hope. And I think the world's tricky right now, and I really appreciated reading something that was so inspiring and, like, filled with classical heroes that are just trying to do good. It was refreshing. It was a palate cleanser, and it built up my confidence as a reader to put down a 1,400-page book in under 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It showed me I can read long books. I can do this. I'm ready for the big boys, which we'll get to. We'll get to next. That's a different kind of beast. But I really like this book. I think my description I just gave to you should tell you if it's the book for you, though.
Yeah.
And I would say if you're ready to dip your toes in epic fantasy, but you're intimidated, don't be intimidated by this. If you need just a palate cleanser, this is a good book. And if you want something deep and philosophical and heady, this is the wrong book. So that's kind of my thing on this. I think Brandon Sanderson is making the literary equivalent of burger and fries. A damn good burger and fries. Everyone can eat it.
Yeah.
Everyone pretty much likes it. You kind of know what you're getting. It's not going to be the meal you remember for the rest of your life, but it's a burger and fries. Like, you don't hate it. You don't always want it. I think that's what he's doing here. And I'm having a really fun time with it.
That's awesome. Like, I'm not going to talk much on it. I think that's all bang on. I definitely came out of it feeling like it was all very shallow. I was kind of bored by the characters, and I just wasn't interested in the kind of story it was wanting to tell, which, you're right, it's cool set pieces. I am hero man. I'm going to do the heroic thing. It does that very well.
In the same way Luke Skywalker does.
Exactly.
It's that level of hero.
And it just wasn't what I was looking for at the time. I finished the first one and was just like, no, thank you, that's enough. But I really like the way you've described it, and I think it's really important not to disparage that.
Yeah.
To, like, it's interesting. There are other books that are similar that I've liked a lot.
Right.
And just for whatever reason with this, maybe it's because of what I was expecting going in. I think part of it coming from Wheel of Time as well, because I have read that, which is a series he picked up and finished.
Yes.
That isn't like that because of the start. I think Robert Jordan was incredible at setting up these characters that are worthy of having a 20,000 page arc.
Right.
And he did the legwork, and then Brandon Sanderson picked it up and put these characters that exist into really cool scenarios, and did the Sanderlanche.
Sanderlanche. Yeah.
Wheel of Time that's the best one. I haven't read any other ones. I don't need to. The end of Wheel of Time, Memory of Light, that's the best one.
Okay.
And I think that, I think I was a bit let down moving from Wheel of Time to that. But anyway.
I think the characters are the biggest complaint I hear about this book, and I think they are valid. These are not three-dimensional characters. They're not one-dimensional. Kaladin is like moody Luke Skywalker.
Yep.
Dalinar, who's my favorite character of the bunch, is like an Obi-Wan or an Uther from Warcraft. He's like a classic lawful good paladin guy, but with a violent past.
Yeah.
And Shallan is like the plucky apprentice. She's got the least in this.
Doesn't do much in this book.
Her
I get the
character,
sense more later. But
she does an incredible character in the second book. But all the characters, despite not having any depth, I still liked hanging out with them.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to be ready for with this book. The interesting characters are the characters you're not reading from the POVs from very often. Like Sadeas, High Prince Sadeas, is an amazing character. Every time he was in a chapter, I'm like, this is such an interesting guy.
Is he the scumbag guy?
He's a scumbag guy.
That one, yeah. Okay,
and
I liked him.
There's one chapter in the second book you read from his POV, and it's the best chapter yet. And I'm like, I don't know why he doesn't just write interesting characters. He seems to like to let his main characters be classic hero archetypes, the types of people that readers can see themselves in the shoes of, and then fill the world with more interesting people. It's a choice. It's not going to make these books as memorable, but it makes them easier to read and digest because it's just a fun adventure romp. So anyway, Stormlight Archives, not going to be for everyone, but there's a reason Brandon Sanderson has the name he is in fantasy, because he's doing good work. You just have to decide whether it's the work for you right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Way of Kings. I'm going to say borrow it.
Is it borrow?
I think it's the kind of book that if you really end up liking, you might decide you want to own these all one day. But it's not going to change your life. And I think it's perfectly reasonable to borrow it from someone, try it out. You might take a year to read it because it's 1,400 pages. But yeah, I'd say borrow. Borrow would be my recommendation. I'm going to own them, but definitely start by borrowing with the Stormlight. What do you got, Avery?
Okay, so the question I'm asking, I finished The Expanse. Now what? And
Now what?
I'll say again, read The Expanse before any of these. Incredible. All of them.
I have read like the first 4 or 5, and they're really good.
Really good. So, the first one is the easy one, and it's also my favorite of the 3, and it's a book called The Mercy of Gods. And the reason it's an easy tee-up is because it is also by James S.A. Corey, which is a fake writer, but that's the guys who wrote The Expanse. It is their next series.
Okay.
This came out. I'm not really big into the online book space, but even within that, I didn't hear anything about this. I saw it in a bookstore once, I'm like, oh my God, they wrote another one? And I bought it. I read it in like 3 days. I loved it. And I've heard not one person mention it, and I've never seen a hint of it anywhere. Huh. So I didn't look it up. Maybe there's this huge online following, people love it, that's great, but I've not heard anything about this book. I thought it was awesome. And I'll say, I finished The Expanse, and now I want just more of that writing in a fresh setting. That's when you pick up The Mercy of Gods. I think that is the strongest part of James S.A. Corey, of their writing, or is literally the writing. I think much in the way that a lot of, you can complain about Brandon Sanderson, how his characters are kind of archetypey and there's not depth to them. James S.A. Corey, which again, it's not a real guy.
It's 2 authors. It's a pen name of 2 authors that are a writing team, but we're going to refer to them as James S.A. Corey.
The way that Corey writes just people in these scenarios is unparalleled. I've never read any story that just does. It is simultaneously the thing we always talk about with Alien, where they're like blue-collar trucker guys, like very real-feeling people that would fit in on Earth today and be believable, but also are appropriate for these sci-fi settings. They're tackling things we couldn't possibly comprehend in a way that feels like it's your coworker, your uncle, your friend, yourself. The way that this author writes those people in these scenarios is amazing.
Do you have like kind of a crew like the Rocinante and equivalent, or is it more?
So yeah, I'll talk. So let's get into the premise of it. It is a human-like society on an Earth-like planet. They're unspecified time and place, whatever, that are aware aliens exist but have not encountered them. There's like evidence of aliens. They don't know from where and when. There's like artifacts on their planet. That's it. Then it's kind of the Hitchhiker's Guide thing. A super advanced alien race shows up, immediately takes down the military, rounds them all up, captures it, like first 10 pages. Bang.
I love that as a setup. Yeah.
It's fun. Again, just like the way they write all these scenes is so good. But what then happens, we stick with a small crew of scientists, of biologists. And they don't know what's happening with the rest, but they get rounded up and they get shipped to what is essentially like this big university campus where there are all of these other captured alien species around, each given a lab and told by this alien race, prove that you're worth keeping. Here is your task. Figure it out. And like that's the setup. So like the literal task they're given, because they're like biologists, they give them this like alien fruit and also this little turtle alien guy. And they're like, figure out how to engineer this fruit so the turtle can eat it without being poisoned. And that's your job. If you do that, you will have proven you guys are worthy of being a part of our alien society.
Wow.
So it's like a very contrived scenario, as opposed to The Expanse, which feels so grounded. This is like a very, the authors really kind of like zoom along to set up a very like tight and focused situation, which is kind of the freshness when compared. Like you're getting the writing, but it's in this very specific scenario that is so different, because not only do you have this, like they're in an alien place, there's an alien race of overseers, there's also all these other captured aliens that they're like competing with. The setup is very like Star Trek-y. This sounds like I'm describing an episode of like TOS.
It sounds like a locked room puzzle kind of thing, right? Like
it is, and it's just the coolest thing about this book was that this is kind of like an anime plotline or like a TOS plotline that wouldn't be taken seriously. These guys take it so seriously. It is, and that's not to say it's like dour necessarily, but this is not at any point a silly book for how kind of silly that premise is,
right?
And how specific and contrived that scenario is. These characters, you're with these like 5 or 6 scientist characters, and they go through like very real trauma of being like transported and going through like the physical effects of like the ship they put them on is like imperfect for human biology. They're like cut off, like some of them aren't getting their medication, they're not getting the right nutrition, and it's these very like real human scenarios within this very far sci-fi scenario that
Right.
isn't like The Expanse. And it's so cool. The world building going on and the interaction of these great characters with this level of sci-fi and this type of sci-fi is just not something I've ever read anywhere else, and I loved it. All that to say, when I say the characters are great, the writing is, and the people all feel very real. This ain't no Rocinante crew.
Okay.
I'll say that. Like that's
Tough. It's a tough call.
it's a tough call.
Yeah.
And like the other thing is, I don't remember how I felt right out of the first Expanse book. I think I liked Jim Holden and Naomi a lot better.
That's right. Rather than a tough call, I should say it's a high bar.
It's a high bar. It's a high bar. So I had to look up the characters. Like I read this book a little bit ago. I remember everything about like what happens. I don't remember the name of one person.
Okay.
So like just for
Yeah.
that. In looking back into it, the main character is a guy named David with an F, sure.
Sci-fi.
Who, yeah, it's sci-fi, it's fine. Who is like he's a somewhat interesting character. He's sort of a Newt Scamander, where he's this very like soft intellectual guy who just kind of sits and observes. And that's the thing. They're biologists. They're
Yeah,
scientists.
they're scientists.
He solves problems by that. He's like a very observant, and he like figures things out about this society that like they are in and are powerless in,
Right.
and starts like playing the social game between the other aliens and the overseers in a way that is cool. And the kind of specific struggles that all the characters go through, like again, for how elevated of a sci-fi setting this is, there's like breakups and like professional jealousy and like, the one girl who just doesn't have her like antidepressants, right? There's just stuff like that,
Right.
that is playing really well in with this sci-fi setting. So the stuff these people go, the actual characters don't really develop, and there isn't a ton there, at least in this first book. But just like the humanity of them is excellent.
Okay.
I will also say you kind of talked about how with Sanderson, you're not looking for anything so heady. This has a lot to say.
Okay.
I'm not going to do it. I certainly couldn't do it justice in a full video, much less this 10-minute pitch. I came out of this book just really thinking a lot about humanity and sci-fi and recontextualizing Star Trek and Star Wars and The Expanse and all these other series that I've read. This is a brilliant piece of writing. I really, really liked it. This is a smash buy. There's going to be a copy of this on my bookshelf forever, and I'm really excited for the next one.
That's awesome. Because I mean, I like the Expanse books, not as much as you do. Because nothing ever came close to the first book for me. Because Miller, the noir detective story within that first book was peak. And I thought, I love this.
And there's no more of that ever
That
again.
was a one-book wonder, unfortunately. That no longer happened, and it's still great books. But I love that intimate, small story with great characters in one place. So I think this might be even something more interesting to me than The Expanse. It's interesting that it's so different in terms of like what they're tackling.
It feels consistent with The Expanse, but then they found a very fresh angle. It's if you could have said like, okay, because the end of The Expanse is the end. Like that is a complete start to end story. I did not want like a little spin-off.
Sure.
So it's like, what do you do next? They found a great thing, which is, okay, The Expanse was relatively, like we're just encountering aliens. Now we're gonna do one, there's 20 aliens that are all like as or more developed than humans, and you're like in the room next to them.
Right.
And like arguing with them. And like learning how to work with them. And it's great. What's your second book, old Reedy Pie?
Well, everything I said about Stormlight, I'm now going to be the opposite because I did the daunting thing of starting 2 epic fantasy series and reading the first book of both. So I read Stormlight, really liked it. Really liked Way of Kings, obviously, everything I already said. But I was like, this has shown me I'm ready for a meaty high fantasy book, something you can sink your teeth into. And our good friend Bill, friend of the channel, picture there, I'm sure he'll be on the channel at some point. His favorite book series of all time is Malazan. He can't shut up about Malazan. He's never recommended something. This is the guy that got me into Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And nothing has he ever recommended to me other than Twin Peaks with this level of reverence. So I knew it was worth seeking out. So I read Gardens of the Moon, the first Malazan book.
I should say this is something I'm vaguely aware that it's a nerdy fantasy guy series that people like. Never read it, know nothing more.
Yeah, and I want to address the perception of this book most of all.
Okay.
Because at a very simple level, this is one of my favorite books I've ever read. I couldn't put this down. I don't think I've ever had a book profoundly impact me in the way this book did. The way it made me feel the way reading Mossflower did as a kid. Where it's like, oh, this is what books can do.
Shouts out Redwall.
Like, this is what books can be.
Yeah.
He is, I truly feel like you feel spoiled kind of reading this book. And I also understand the community considers this far and away to be the worst book, which is mind-boggling to me. It's not quite as big as Way of Kings. I read this in under a week. I couldn't put this down. So I love this book and I want to talk about why, but I want to address the perception of Malazan. Because everything you read about this book online, I've seen it like on online discussions, is that Malazan is super hard, dense, hard to get through, challenging.
In my head, it's Three Body Problem, but fantasy.
Yeah.
It's like that heady.
Yeah, and it's not like it's completely untrue, but I think trying to describe what Malazan is to people that haven't read it and starting with that is fruitless. I was thinking about, I'm going to keep my food analogy going. Stormlight is a burger and fries. I think Malazan is haggis. And I want to explain why. Haggis is delicious.
It is.
But it's disgusting. It's like stomach stuffed in kidneys, stuffed in, I don't even know.
Yeah, you grow up and it's like a meme of like the grossest, and then you have some and it's like, this is just like a little
the salty,
savory,
delicious
just
food.
sausage, basically.
If you want to convince someone to eat haggis, don't tell them what it is. Just tell them it's delicious.
Yeah, just like tell them to have a bite.
And then if they eat it, be like, funny enough, this is what's in it. That's reading Malazan. This book gets this reputation for being so hard and dense and all that. If I was going to recommend this book to someone, the only thing I would tell them is it's one of the most entertaining things I've ever read. It is dense, it is challenging, you have to read carefully if you want to get everything the first time, but by the time that's a problem, you won't care, because you're completely engrossed in it. By the time this book is challenging, by the time you even comprehend why people think this is a hard book to read, you're already in. You're gonna finish it, and it's not gonna be a problem, or you dropped out at chapter 2. Or you already dropped out. So there's nothing to lose. Like, it's not as hard as it seems, and I definitely want to correct the discourse on this.
Sure.
It's one of the best books I've ever read. Don't not read this because you're intimidated. You should try it. I think the writing in this is some of the best writing I've ever read. Stephen Erickson, he's a Canadian author, which we love.
Shouts out.
He's an anthropologist. Is clearly fixated on kind of the mass movements of people and empires. The scale of this book is huge, right? It spans continents. It's. I think the best way to describe the opening of this book is to tell you how the first 2 chapters go. The first chapter is this very kind of personal story that's more or less from like 2 character point of views. This very little small conflict, you can completely follow it. It's giving you little bits of implicit world building about the world at large. But you're mostly following one character essentially solving a mystery, and they set up some mysteries for the rest of the series that are very enticing. But it's all typical kind of fantasy fare at this point. There's nothing so crazy, although the first literal event is kind of like, what did I just read? But it's a pretty normal chapter. Chapter 2, you move to a separate continent. You are with a complete new cast of characters, you don't know any of them, and it is the turning point battle of a war that has been going on for over 100 years. Our characters are part of a cadre of mages that are sieging a city called Pale. And the city of Pale is being defended by a giant floating city called Moonspawn, which houses these elder races. We don't even know if they're not even humans. We don't even know what's going on there. So there's a city under siege being defended by a giant floating city, and we are immediately into the most badass war I have ever read in a book. The implications of which you don't even understand. You don't know who these people are. You don't know why this battle matters. There's wizards casting magic at the flying city and shearing cliffs that fall to the city below, killing thousands of people. There's demons coming up out of the ground. And the book, it just never stops. That's chapter 2, and it just keeps going. But despite that, despite how grand and epic it is, the way he writes individual character moments is so compelling. The way he communicates the quiet moments between these like epic mythological things that feel like so grand, it's like, how are we even witnessing this? Everything about this book is solid. He writes those big epic set pieces. He writes little character moments. He even goes into romance. This book literally has everything in it. There's even like a D&D-esque, like Count of Monte Cristo, like adventures in like another city thing going on for a while that somehow gets wrapped into the whole plot. There's just so much going on. He's such an excellent writer. And when I finished reading this, I have not stopped rereading this. I keep coming back to it and reading certain chapters that I'm just trying to wrap my head around, or that I'm just reading because the writing is so beautiful. Every chapter starts with like an epitaph, like Dune, which are like transcripts from books in the world. And I've reread them because like as early as chapters 1 and 2, they're foreshadowing the end of this book and presumably events well beyond this book. Again, there's 10 of these, just like Stormlights, but they're done. They're all done, and apparently the 10th one's the best one. So that's my recommendation for Malazan. It's very hard to even really talk about this book without kind of scaring people off, except to say it's one of the best dang things I've ever read. And I've never been more excited to start a second book in a series.
So let me ask this about it. You're describing a lot of like vignettes essentially that are very disparate. Do you feel like they're all building towards something at this point, having just like after just reading the one?
Yes.
Okay.
So this book has...
There's a point to the fact that it's 100 different stories from 100 different things?
Yeah, and I kind of want to address this, but I'm going to say it with the grain of salt of like, don't not read this book because I scare you. Yeah. Because again, you're going to be fine. There are 33 character point of views in this book.
That's a lot.
Some of them are like a paragraph though. Right. Because what he does is he's showing you these like epic events, but he always shows you through the eyes of someone who's there. And even if they have a paragraph, you remember that person. He gives you something that makes that feel like a fully realized character.
Right.
And
it's a hard thing to do.
All the storylines converge into one conflict at the end of this book that kind of wraps up in a relatively neat bow. So it's not like shit's going on all over the place. I think the true sense of scale of these books, you really won't get till you keep going.
Yeah.
I haven't started the second book, but it is literally on a separate continent with all new characters and has virtually nothing to do with this other than it's in the same universe. And apparently you come back to this storyline in the third book. I say all this stuff. 33 character point of views, continent spanning, epic scale. It sounds like a lot of work. It sounds like a lot of buy-in to the reader. It sounds like this writer's up his own ass and kind of showing off. And what I can't express enough is how there is no ego in his writing. It has all that. It has all this like kind of stuff that sounds like it's a writer almost showing off what they can do, but all of it is for you, the reader. All of it is to make the book as fun to read as possible. None of it's his ego trip. Like when he wrote these, he was a relatively unknown author and he got a 10-book deal from like a relatively small publisher. He was writing these to sell. He wasn't writing these as this, artistic expression opportunity. This guy was a working writer. And I think that it's fascinating how he ties in these huge concepts that feel like things that you would certainly not try if you were just trying to write kind of your first fantasy series. And he actually pulls it off, but he's doing it for you. It's all to make the book fun and readable and interesting.
It's cool. One of my favorite things is when insane ambition pays off.
Yeah.
When someone does something crazy ambitious and it works. Because a lot of guys do something crazy ambitious and it doesn't work, or they do something that isn't very ambitious.
Yeah. And I feel like the last thing about Malazan, I read a quote from Steven Erikson. Someone asked him, what is Malazan about? Because someone tried to quantify this. And he said, the book of Malazan, all 10 books, he considers to be a 3.5 million word plea for compassion. And I thought, wow, this guy's a good writer, because that's a great quote.
Cool.
These books are dark and scary. There's lots of horrific events that happen, and like real atrocities occur in this book. But
really selling it.
But the through line is that human compassion will prevail, even if it's like this tiny little candlelight amidst a sea of darkness. Human compassion is always important, and empathy for your common man is like the message of these stories, even if they are overwhelmingly kind of dark and spooky. And I think that's something I would want people to know going into this, this is not grimdark, this is not talk to me, fuck you movie, where it's like, the point of the book is not to make you upset, the point of the book is to show you how heroes can still arise out of overwhelming odds, but in a much more grounded and disturbing way than like Sanderson, who's presenting more classic heroic fantasy. This is more like Dark Souls, where there's like this glimmer of hope that we're all holding on to. That's really what Malazan is going for.
I feel like there's a pretty important line in your fantasy, and stick with me here. Is there a plague? That's the difference between dark and light fantasy. Is there a plague?
There's no plague.
I bet there's a plague by the end of 10.
I'll bet there is a plague. I could see there being a plague.
Tell me I'm wrong. That's the difference. Dark Souls, plague. That one, no plague.
No plague.
If there's a plague, it's dark fantasy.
This will have a plague. I feel confident. Someone in the comments will be like, you just wait. Book 7, there's a plague. I do want to also say one dissenting thing about Gardens of the Moon, because I've been obviously singing this book's praises, and I did really, really love it. This is an own it. for me. So buy it. Sorry, like
Yeah.
It's almost a shame. This was so unpopular when it was first coming out. It's only found an audience now. There isn't even 10 under the same publication available. You have to find, like, they all look different, and it's like the covers don't match, which drives me nuts. One day I'll get like a 10 box set of these, and I'll be very happy, man. But my only real criticism of this is that this book has so much going on, and all the storylines finally come together at the end, and he pulls it off. He really makes every single thing that felt like it couldn't possibly be related, more so than the Sander Lanch. The Erickson Lanch, no one's talking about it. He really does it. What he does on top of that frustrated me is he started adding more at like the 95% mark.
Oh, okay.
Like one guy drops a potion that spawns another guy who's now like a boss fight towards the end, and I'm like, what? like I thought it was over, and then a bunch of more shit happened that was not set up.
It's like the Scouring of the Shire. It's like, we got
it's-
another thing?
Yeah, a little bit like that.
I don't want to talk down in Lord of the Rings, but...
Whereas a little bit like, I feel like we had enough shit going on. You didn't need to add more. I will say the caveat to that is that some of it may be set up for the following books.
Yeah, I mean, the sense I get from this is that he has an entire wall of his house that is the entire 10,000 year timeline, and he's like picking out little vignettes.
They at one point talk about what one of these characters was up to 300,000 years ago. And I was like, what was going on Earth 300,000 years ago? I looked it up. It was like when people were first migrating out of Africa. It was that. That's how long ago they're talking about in this book. So
Right.
that he is certainly like that. But despite that, this book has a very clear like collection of characters that all come together to one thing. But then there's these little threads where I'm like, either they were just not that well thought through, or they are kind of sequel bait. And I think if you keep reading, it's probably not a problem, but I still wish books could stand on their own a bit more. There's basically a Deus Ex Machina for the main conflict.
Sure.
In a way that the name of the thing is literally the name of the second book, so I'm like, it's that. I wish it was a little cleaner of a book one. I wish it didn't add all this kind of shit at the end. It's the only thing I could possibly say bad about this book, though.
Sure.
And I'm sure by the time I've read all 10, I'll be like, I love that they did that, because it's like I know what it is. But as someone who's only read the first one, I do have to say that. But still, buy it.
Bye.
Buy it.
Now you've read The Expanse, and what you really liked was the sci-fi. You liked the proto-molecule and the what happens if humans encounter this very incomprehensible thing, but it's mostly like near future sci-fi, and I want to explore that. Then let me introduce you to a little book called To Sleep in a Sea of Stars.
Okay.
This book is written by Chris Paolini, who wrote Aragon.
Ah.
Not Aragorn, Aragon, O-N. The series that this was a formative series for a lot of people about my age.
Including both of us, I think,
okay,
right?
yeah.
I loved Aragon and
yes.
Eldest. So.
I absolutely love those books. So I'll talk for them for a second because it's kind of become trendy to shit on them a little bit. Because they are very derivative in some of their storytelling. They're like, it's Star Wars.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they're also
Lord of the
kids'
Rings.
books.
They're young adult books, for sure. And like there's valid criticisms. He wrote the first one when he was 16.
Wow.
So, yeah, really young, and it's not like they're young adult books, but they're not kids.
You wouldn't know he's 16.
No, you wouldn't know he's 16. I really enjoyed them, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about like what I liked so much about them compared to a lot of similar stuff. This was his big follow-up. He didn't write anything after Inheritance for a long time. He wrote one follow-up book that I also liked, but this was his what's new, and it was like 15 years later. Was this sci-fi book called To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. The premise of it is very similar to Mercy of Gods, actually, where it's a couple hundred years in the future human society. They've colonized a lot of the galaxy and a lot of planets. They have FTL travel, but it's relatively hard sci-fi. They're like working on terraforming. It's not like they're not omnipotent.
It's not a utopia.
No, and they've discovered, and again, very similar, they are aware that aliens exist because of one artifact. There's one thing that's a weird thing that was made by aliens, and they don't know much about it. So we have our hero, Kira, is a xenobiologist or a xeno researcher, where she's studied this thing and is out there basically looking for evidence of more alien stuff. She's like a researcher. And she essentially finds the Venom symbiote.
Okay.
That's it. She finds this alien artifact, the second one ever, which is this super suit of nanomaterial that binds to her and makes her like super powerful and able to float in space. And now stick with me, because yes, that's pretty silly. That's the silliest thing about this book. It's very contrived. You got to get over it because it is worth it.
Okay.
And similar to the Venom symbiote thing, it is like the first thing she does is accidentally kill her entire crew, and like her husband.
Okay.
And then
That's kind of interesting.
it is interesting. And then an entire race of highly advanced aliens shows up because they like it's related. You don't really find out why, but and then now we're going. Now we've gone from like relatively calm human society to she has found this thing, and also a race of jellyfish alien monsters who are like fully spacefaring and more advanced than humanity has showed up and attacked. And now that's our setup, and now we're going. It is definitely somewhat Marvel-y. Compared to the last book I talked about, to Mercy of Gods, which I think is really heady, it's scientists solving problems, it's interpersonal stuff. This is like one person who's basically a superhero going through on kind of a swashbuckling adventure through the universe. It's more of a kind of fun, focused story that is a lot less deep.
Okay.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about like why Eragon has stuck with me so much, why the inheritance cycle has stuck with me so much. And I think the thing that Chris Paolini does incredibly well is to write a protagonist. And not just a hero or a main character, but a proper capital P protagonist. Mercy of Gods and The Expanse, and I would say Stormlight, don't really have a protagonist. They have main characters, but Eragon and Kira, and that's the strongest part of this book, are great protagonists. You go through the whole thing with them. The story is tight on them the entire series. You're going through the highs and lows. They're flawed. They're traumatized. They're victorious. Like, you get the whole ride with this one person who you really feel like you get to know and who is like worth spending this much time with. I think that's the strongest thing about the inheritance cycle, and I think that's the strongest thing here. Kira's awesome. She's a really good character that like I said, you get to know her. I really enjoyed seeing her encounter all this stuff, meet, like she gets picked up by a ship and she's part of this little crew and then has to go on all these sci-fi adventures. It's a big book, it's like 800 pages. As she's like discovering how to like navigate having this like super suit thing, figuring out what's going on with the other aliens, figuring out this whole thing. Her arc and spending time with her character as she's encountering all these like fun sci-fi ideas, like that's the sell.
Okay.
It's a more heady in sci-fi than Marvel, but closer to that of a sci-fi adventure. Buy it for that. Like this is gonna be a borrow for me, but borrow it for that.
Proverbially buy it.
Buy it for that. Like that's the pitch. If you enjoy it, if that's what you came out of The Expanse, great. Some of the things that I will knock about this compared to some of the truly great sci-fi I've read. The universe it does feel very shallow, and this is the same criticism a lot of people had for the inheritance cycle. It feels very small and shallow in that you do not feel like at any point like you're part of this large sprawling society, even though it tells you are.
Right.
You're with Kira, and throughout the book you're getting these updates like where some general will tell her like, we're losing the war to the jellyfish, and she's like, shit. Anyway, back to what we're doing. Like, and that's really it. Like, that's what's going on is what's going on right around her, and nothing else really exists past that. And a lot of the sci-fi ideas are kind of there because they're fun, as opposed to them saying anything. Like these jellyfish guys make for good set pieces. They communicate through smell, and their ships are really weird. But it doesn't really do nearly as much as the last book I talked about. Like, not even close in terms of like, what are we saying by having this other species? Like, what is different? What does this say about humanity?
Does it tie into the themes and messages of the book, or is it just
like a
backdrop?
little? Yeah, it's backdrop, and it makes for fun set pieces and a fun adventure. But that's really it. Same with her super suit. It just makes for good action, and it's fun. It isn't really saying that much. One of the biggest things that I was frustrated by in this book, it's very long. The whole middle arc, and I think this is the worst Marvel-y thing it does, is there's this MacGuffin super weapon thing. That's like the whole middle part of the book where they find this prophecy about the super weapon that'll defeat the aliens and save everything. And I'm just like, as soon as they start talking about that, I'm like, oh God. And it pulls it back. Like there's a bit of a subversion. where
Doesn't go full Death Star.
she doesn't just get it, shoot a beam into the sky, and everyone's saved. That's not what happens.
Well, that's good.
I was worried. But like that's, I think, of the prime example of like this completely uninteresting super weapon that is on a distant planet. They spend the whole middle part of the book going after that. I'm like, don't do that.
Yeah.
That's not interesting. So that's, I think, a great example of like, The Expanse doesn't have that.
No.
When there's super weapons there, it's for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's
Thousands of years in the
Yes.
making.
Yeah, exactly. And so this, it does a little bit of that. And if you're someone who you really want your sci-fi to be like well thought out and everything connects and builds on each other, I don't think this quite gets there. But that being said, for just a sci-fi adventure story with cool characters, and I haven't really talked much about her little crew, they're really fun. I don't want the next book I'm going to talk about. It does the crew better, which is kind of tough, but it is fun. The standout, who I should mention, they have a ship's AI, who Gregorovich, who's like this semi-insane philosopher, who just like it's really hard to describe. But every time anyone talked to him was like the best part of the book.
Okay.
He's just like the little conversations he has is just like this. It was cool because unlike a lot of the other stuff, it was saying something. It's like Gregorovich is like a repurposed human who has been turned into a ship's AI and given infinite brain power and knowledge. And it's like
body horror.
a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's like reflective of that, where he like will do his job, but it is like talking to someone who literally knows all the knowledge ever. And so like that's one of the actually very cool sci-fi ideas.
Cool.
And the other thing that this does build on, I should say, from the Inheritance cycle, like you said, body horror. This is a lot darker and more violent, and there is body horror for sure. Like this gets into a lot more like mature adult things than Inheritance ever did.
So is this not YA?
No.
Okay.
This is, I mean,
It would
feels,
be suitable for advanced young adults, but it's
Yeah.
not YA? Is
Yeah.
that okay?
Parts of it feel YA in the kind of shallowness and the focus on one character, but no, it's an 800-page sci-fi story, and I've definitely
Right.
read adult sci-fi that is more childish than
Okay,
this.
cool.
Like, it is not YA. So that's To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. This is a borrow. I think this is definitely worth a read if you like sci-fi, if you liked Aragon, and if you read The Expanse, this is a worthwhile, give it a try. It does some things as well, and some things not as well.
You were talking about something in that. We talked about with Malazan, does it have a plague or does not have a plague? But I think is a fun way to start category. Like high fantasy and fantasy sci-fi is one genre in literature to me. It's all blended together. Whether or not you have a plague is a fun thing to try to quantify them. You talked about something. So this is, I mean, I'll put a proper map up on the actual screen, but this is the map of Roshar in the Stormlight Archives. I'm 2/3 of the way through book 2, and so far the entire story has taken place there.
Yeah.
With one kingdom, about 3 characters, and I think similar to Is There a Plague? You gotta ask yourself, do I want my epic fantasy to have a character POV spread out all over the map in like different kingdoms, the Game of Thrones style?
Yeah.
Like we're following every single major player equally? Or do you want it to be more of a focused narrative, which would be true of Stormlight, it's clearly true of this book. Star Wars, again,
Yeah.
huge world, but we're in like 3 spots with like 4 people, right? I think that's an interesting thing to think about with sci-fi fantasy that is another branching path that a lot of people don't even talk about. Like when people
Yeah.
are making these recommendations, to me that's something I want to know going in.
Game of Thrones didn't invent it, but
No.
it kind of popularized
Yeah.
the many different threads and characters that, like, even jumping time periods that, I mean, Expanse did it. Like they were, those 2 guys worked with George R. R. Martin. Like they learned directly from him. They're kind of another popular example. But yeah, I think prior to that, it was pretty common. And I mean, Wheel of Time is another good one. There's 9,000 POV characters in that series. But yeah, I think for being locked in on one character, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars does a really good job with that. But yeah, I think that is a good differentiator.
Cool. Number 3 is kind of 2 books, but of a series that I want to talk about, and these are the Scudder mysteries.
Yeah, I'm only vaguely aware that you've been reading these. I know nothing about it.
And I have never read a mystery, which is kind of interesting. I think I always look down on it because I'm like, when I think about movies, and a lot of my interest in literature stemmed from my interest in movies, not the other way around. I'm not into like detective movies or noirs. I mean, I've liked them. The Miller stuff in The Expanse and the show and the book was some of my favorite fiction ever.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I had this mental blocker that like noir is lame. I'm not interested in detectives. And then I just read some, which are these books, the Matthew Scudder Mysteries, and I absolutely loved them. Now, I'm also realizing I've read some of what are supposedly some of the best mystery pulp ever, because the author is Lawrence Block. Very well-respected author. Stephen King lists him as one of his major influences in writing. And like,
Oh, so it's like old.
he started writing these in the 60s. I think they ended around 2010.
Oh, wow.
There's like 30 of the Scudder novels, and
I've never heard of this.
And I've read, I mean, the problem is there's more mystery books than there are any other types of books.
Yeah,
like you
I
go to
guess.
the fucking used bookstore, the mystery novels are so intimidating.
I feel like it's the same 4 authors or the entire shelf.
Yeah, and I'm just scratching the surface. There's big boys in the genre I haven't touched. I haven't read any of Donald Westlake yet, although I picked up one of his books. But like Lawrence Block, now I've read 2 of them. I read In the Midst of Death and another one that 8 Million Ways to Die, which I think is the 5th book. You don't need to read them in order. These books are fantastic. I think I've been sleeping on the mystery genre, but I don't want to just say this is all genre-based appreciation. Lawrence Block is such a good writer. He writes, these stories are relatively simple. They are noir detective novels set in New York. A kind of fun twist on it is that it's always set in New York the year he wrote the book, but Scudder's always the same age.
Oh, interesting.
Which
Okay.
is, they just don't explain it.
Sure. So he just like has a cell phone at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten up to like the 70s, so I'm not still, it hasn't changed much, but he hasn't aged. And they're just beautifully written. And I've been reading these epic fantasy books, and these are the perfect kind of fill-in betweens. He writes a great mystery that kind of is the reason you get into the books. But what keeps you hooked is that Scudder is such a fascinating protagonist, and all the side characters are so well written. And every scene that's just 2 people talking is some of the sharpest, witty dialogue I've ever read. It's not comedy, but there's like a dry, almost British comedy to the writing, like a real black.
It's common in noir.
Yeah, like a real black comedy to it. But he's so sharp with his dialogue in a way that I haven't read in other books, where it's like I'm just reading this conversation between a cop and a detective, and I'm gripped, and I don't even really care about the mystery.
Yeah.
But there just feels so real. And Scudder as a character, he's kind of he's kind of like he took the typical stereotypical noir detective guy and just wrote him really well. It doesn't reinvent the wheel. He's the alcoholic, hard-nosed detective who used to be a cop. Everything he does with the character is so fascinating. He's kind of sensitive and quiet. The closest thing I could compare Scudder to is like a young Mike Ehrmantraut
Sure. Okay.
from like Better Call Saul.
Yeah.
Kind of guy, where it's almost competency porn with this guy who's like deeply sad but just kind of resigned to his lot in life. He's such a fascinating guy to read from, and the one through line, even though you can kind of read them in any order, is his alcoholism. And even in the 3rd book, In the Midst of Death, he's a full-blown alcoholic. One of my favorite little things is whenever he goes down to the bar, he orders a coffee and 2 shots of bourbon, and he has one of the bourbons and he puts the other one in the coffee. And I'm like, that's one of the most badass things I've ever read. He goes the whole book doing the mystery, and he's just drinking and boozing the whole time. And like, he's not talking about it. So you're like, does Lawrence Block, the author, not know he's an alcoholic? Does Scudder not? Get to the 5th book, and he's finally like confronting the alcoholism. It just like, he wasn't aware in the 3rd book. And his like challenges with alcoholism, I got emotional reading this book about him struggling through that, sitting in his hotel room thinking about picking up the bottle. This is not something I've ever even struggling with personally, but he writes it in a way where you are like right there with him. And it's like heartbreaking. You like this Scudder guy just enough that to hear what he's going through completely alone was like really heart-wrenching. And then you're back to the fun, pulpy mystery. And it's just it just keeps your brain engaged in such an interesting way where the quiet moments feel so intimate. And the mystery is like a fun glimpse into the underbelly of New York. And it never stayed too long in one of those places. And they're short. Both these books I read in like a day or 2. And I just highly recommend them for anyone that's like, I don't know what to read. I just want to read a thing. It's like, pick one of these up. They're so fast. He's a simple writer. Like, his prose isn't complex, but it's so intentional. Every word is in the perfect place.
Yeah.
And I just can't recommend him enough.
Cool. I feel like something that's under-discussed is, at least I and a lot of people I've talked to have like very specific hang-ups with books. Whether it's, I can't have fantasy stuff. I can't have dragons and magic. I can't have too many metaphors. I can't have too many characters. A lot of people pick up a book and are just like, there's just things I don't want to read. And I want to defend myself, and I just didn't know.
Sure, yeah.
And sometimes it's nice to have a book where like there won't be any of those.
No, it's disarming.
Yeah.
It's like you can't help but be compelled by this book, and even if you don't love it, you'll be done it before you were aware. Like it's just, I think he kind of made his mark. I respect Lawrence Block because he wrote his whole career. He taught a lot on writing, and he wrote a lot about writing. But he never really broke out of the pulp subgenre. Like a lot of people would consider what he wrote to be trash.
Yeah.
But he wrote trash as well as other authors that were considered literature.
Yeah.
But he was just applying it to this kind of look down upon subgenre. And I think especially as guys who like love horror, and especially me loving like B horror and kind of like that low budget indie horror scene, seeing like such a talented writer apply it to pulp mystery novels feels like that. It feels like discovering like an old horror movie where I just appreciate the craft of it, even though it's within a genre that's like looked down upon, you know? So I just loved it. Pick up doesn't matter, go to your used bookstore. If there's a Scudder novel, there's like 45 of them, just pick one up, give it a go. You'll have a nice time.
So is this a borrow?
It's a borrow.
Sure.
You can't own all these.
Yeah, right.
It's too fucking many.
Sure.
Like I plan to have a few on my bookshelf, but also if I saw one at the library I hadn't read yet, I would read it and just, right? Like that's how I would approach these.
There you go. I'm going to do a quick plug because a lot of what you said applies to a little series that I wrote a little something about called the Dresden Files. It's just that plus like wizards and shit. It's
true.
But it's great.
Check it out on our Patreon.
Check it out. It's free. You can check it out, and there's going to be more that you got to be a patron to read those. But check it out. Our last one. If you read The Expanse, and now what?
And now what?
If you read The Expanse and you just want to keep hanging out with a little crew of a spaceship, but maybe in a little bit of a lower stakes adventure, you should pick up The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. So this is a book by an author named Becky Chambers that I just picked up off of a shelf completely randomly. Had never heard anything about it. She's gotten a bit bigger now from what I understand, but this is a cozy slice of life sci-fi story. This is about a plucky young woman who gets placed on a ship that is well, I'll explain what the ship does in a sec, 'cause it's kind of secondary, but it's a ship with about 10 people, half of which are aliens of different species, and they just kind of go about their job. And she just gets to know these alien species and like hangs out with them. And that's the pitch. And I loved it. It was really cool. So the ship, there is a kind of, it's an interesting world. It's sort of a midpoint of the last two I've talked about, where it's not like a masterfully crafted, expansive universe, but it's not small either.
Okay.
There's a cool sci-fi world similar to like a Star Trek, where there's stuff there. Their ship is a tunneling ship. The idea is that the way that faster than light travel works is that these tunneling ships have to do the trip first. And it's very hard and dangerous and complicated. And once they get there, they essentially make a fast travel point that now shipping other regular ships can go.
That's a neat idea.
There's a lot of this. There's a lot of like, that's cool. I didn't think of that. And the biggest sell of this to certain people, and the way I'd pitch this, is that there's a lot of stuff like that where this is not, there's no fighting. There's no conflict. There's no violence. There's no like chosen one. You are hanging out with characters doing their job.
No super weapon?
No super weapon. Absolutely no super weapon.
No plague?
No plague. Actually, no, there is. Sorry, there is. There for sure is.
Oh, fuck.
Sorry. I'll get to that. But the best thing and the thing I'll sell about this is exactly that. This is a cute, cozy story where you're hanging out with these characters doing their jobs, and they are not the hero of the galaxy. They are not embroiled in the most important event of the last 1,000 years. They're just hanging out. And the reason that's interesting is because this author does such a great job of asking those little questions and thinking about sci-fi and aliens from just a different way than I've ever thought about it or been presented with it. Closer to something like a comedy or a sitcom. Like it, not in tone, but in content, it's closer to like the Orville.
Okay.
I'll start with one of the examples. One of the characters is like a reptilian alien who just speaks normally and is like a normal adult mentally, but is going through stuff like being really annoyed because she's itchy because she's molting, and is like being shitty to the other crew and like complaining because she's molting and it sucks. Or similarly, because lizards, she's cold-blooded, the way that their society, like they're constantly huddling together. So like this lizard character is just like very touchy with everyone, and also will just like immediately have sex with anyone because it's like not a big deal, and has to like go through adjusting to being around species that don't like to be wrapped up in each other all the time. So it's just little things like that. The other kind of really interesting character, probably one of my favorites, the navigator of the ship, is something called a Scianot pair. And what that is, it's one alien that is infected with another parasitic alien. And that both gives them this incredible mental capacity so they can navigate these tunneling ships, but also kills them prematurely. Like it really reduces their lifespan where they get sick and die painfully very young. That's one of kind of the central things, but unlike something like an episode of Star Trek where it would be Captain Picard rolls up, finds out about this, gives a heroic speech about how this is immoral and we have to stop, and they solve the problem. This is the low stakes story. So our main character, Rosemary, finds out about this, but it's just like a fact of life, and she's just learning about it
works.
and like getting to know this person who just had like it's part of this, learning about like it's part of their religion, it's their entire society. It's a big ceremony to get infected with this parasite that is going to kill you young, but is going to give you the whole thing of your species, the most important thing. And like they have all these conversations about it, and they learn about it. And there's 6 or 7 of these little, and there's like a cyborgy, technologically enhanced human, and then there's just standard humans. And just every chapter is just like 2 of these characters interacting. You might go to one of their backstory. Another thing I can compare it to is like the side missions of Mass Effect.
Okay.
People liked Mass Effect. I mean, Mass Effect does have the chosen one, big save the universe story. But my favorite content in Mass Effect is like you go to someone's little planet and you find out about like their family and like help them. That's what this book is.
Quiet character moments,
And just Becky Chambers' perspective on this stuff is just really refreshing and cool.
Okay.
So The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. The other thing I should say, this book does actually sit in a kind of an overarching plot where there's trying, the Federation essentially is trying to establish contact with this previously very violent alien race. And they kind of get embroiled in that a little bit. They're not like at the forefront, but they're around it. And it's very interesting. The disclaimer is that there are 2 more books in the series. They don't do anything with it. The story does not continue.
Oh.
You think it will. You finish the first book and you're like, this is cool. I'm excited to stay. She doesn't. I don't know why. This is weird, but like you need to know this. The second book is like the crew stops off at this space station and just does nothing related to the plot. And then it cuts with some backstory. And then the third book is completely different characters somewhere else. And then she's written more books that are, again, so that's the thing, is like she sort of tried to have the big sci-fi epic plot in the first one, but like her perspective is like, I don't want to write it about the hero. I want to write it about some of the guys. And then when she got to the second book, she's like, screw it. We're just doing something else.
Okay.
So you're not going to get a satisfying conclusion to that.
To the epic arc.
No. So go into this as we're just going to like, similar to the Rocinante had in The Expanse, had just a lot of really fun scenes of just Amos and Naomi and Jim. They're just great characters, fun to hang out with. That's this. Only with that layer on top of it's aliens, but it's not aliens and their impact on all of society as a whole. It's what is it like to sit across from a table with a reptile woman?
Right.
Or with a big ape man and just like chat.
Well, it's kind of like recontextualizing human interaction through aliens, right?
Yeah.
Like, because the lizard is functionally just someone who is too touchy and has like, irritable stuff, but it can present it in a way that's not just that.
Yeah.
Because it's about their actual species. That's neat.
It's very neat. I enjoyed the heck out of this. It just feels really fresh from... It almost made me feel guilty that like every sci-fi story ever is like, if there's aliens, it's how do we kill them, right? And it's just like, how are we respectful as crewmates? I was just like, oh yeah, that's cool. I didn't think about that.
Worth thinking about.
You don't just have to kill him. And this is a borrow for me. I enjoyed this one. I was definitely like soured a little bit by, maybe someone loved the third book. By the time I got to that one, it was not doing it for me. Okay. And she has some more. I don't know. It seems like her writing is a little inconsistent for me. This first book, at least, is like one very tight, complete story that I had a ton of fun reading. It's pretty small. It's a lot smaller than the other 2 books. It's a quick read. Definitely a borrow and read for, I would say, any fan of sci-fi. And especially if you're someone who's like anti-grimdark, anti-chosen one, violent, super weapon, torture, murder, like I want sci-fi, but like light, fun, cheery, but interesting and thoughtful still.
I've realized a trope I love in sci-fi, and this book has it too, is when flying a ship is really hard, so you have to fuck up your whole body and life to be able to fly ships. I don't know why, but that is always cool to me, and it's probably because of Dune, because the navigators had to consume so much spice they became like horrible fish monsters, but that was the only brains capable of...
Go ahead and comment about Red Rising now. Go!
I know. Well, I'm trying to read the first Red Rising book.
Yeah, it's bad.
Not liking it, but I've realized Red Rising does this too, and it's what made me think of it.
You gotta get to The Empire Strikes Back on that one.
I guess.
Two is good.
It's hard. I'm gonna have to get through Mr. Sanderson first,
Yeah.
and then Malazan, and then maybe we'll come back to...
Different series. We'll talk about that one later.
Well, those were books. We did it. We talked about some books. Hopefully this was interesting and you found something you maybe want to go read in your own time. We're gonna keep doing this over on our Patreon. So this was like a little bit of a teaser. The way we're thinking about this is we've started the Patreon book club. This is our plug section. So if you hate plugs, run away. Over on the Patreon, we're basically just gonna post the books that we're reading. You can keep up with them if you want. You'll see what I'm reading, you'll see what Avery's reading. Sometimes he might be the same, sometimes it's gonna be reading stuff independently. And at some point, we're gonna do a review on them. Now, it might just be something that's only on Patreon. I have one up that's a video of me doing a review of the first 2 books of the Southern Reach trilogy, Annihilation and Control. Avery's done a written review for the Dresden Files.
And another one coming soon.
Yeah, so we're gonna do those reviews over on Patreon, and then sometimes we might do it like this, where we do like a panel discussion, maybe if we read the same book, and some of those might make their way to YouTube. It'll kind of depend on how these videos do, and if you guys want to hear us talk about books. So let us know, is this fun? Do you like hearing us talk about books? Are you guys like, shut up, go back to horror movies? That's fine too. We just, let us know. But we'll keep doing books on the Patreon no matter what, and then maybe sometimes you'll see some books float their way over to YouTube.
What are some of your favorite books? I think we've heard about a lot of the movies as the thing as well, right? Like we know some stuff about books, but I think there is a lot of room for if we just had that conversation, you're like, you know what they should check out?
Yeah.
Pretty good chance we haven't heard of it. So please comment those. We love hearing about them, getting stuff on the list.
That's true. I know a lot less about books than I do about
books.
movies. So it's that would be handy. That would be handy. Well, how do we end this? Oh.